21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
When I come into a client, I'm not a CFO as much as I am a doctor of money. And I'm diagnosing my patient from the moment I get there. That training has never left me. And when I come into a client, the first thing I'm looking for, what are your symptoms? Maybe you're staying up at night because you can't forecast your cash. Maybe you're worried and anxious, should I invest in engineering or should I invest in sales? And you don't know how to answer that because you don't have the right numbers. Or we're bleeding cash and I don't know why, okay? So it could be an emergency situation. You're bleeding and you need somebody to stop the bleeding. You're in pain, you don't know why. So for me, I don't think of it consciously in those terms, but when I come into a client, the first thing I'm looking at is diagnosing what the symptoms are that I see so that I can cure the problem, not just treat it. What I find a lot of accountants do is they treat the symptoms with another report or a spreadsheet or something, and they don't go after the root cause to say, you know what, if I stop this thing where it happens, then I don't have to deal with, in the medical term, it's called the sequelae, but I don't have to worry about the results, okay? I don't have to worry about the bad results. So originally I started off in medicine, but the very next step after medicine, when I decided I did not want to be a doctor, was I actually went into manufacturing. And in manufacturing, I guess it's because it started with an M and so did medicine, right? And I live in Michigan, so it's all M's, right? But in the end, manufacturing to me was a very easy step to take from medicine because a factory is no different than a human body. Where you have blood flow, we have cash flow. Where you have a nervous system, we have an IT system. Where you have a delivery department, you have legs. Where you have a production department, you have organs, right? If you pick your analogy long enough, you realize that all these things are interconnected. And if there's a disorder in one area, it can show up in somewhere else, right? And so the parallels were very easy for me to make. And then the Japanese manufacturing part of it was manufacturing. Then from there, I went into ERP systems, which was like this all-encompassing everything. And from there, I went into Japanese manufacturing. And that progression just kept building on that medical training, which is go after the root cause, find the best way to treat the symptom at its cause, whether it's a system problem, hey, we're not getting reports, or it's a true cash flow problem. We're not making enough money. What do we do? To me, that's how I approach it. And I think that's what makes me, different from, other CFOs. I was not a finance person first. I was trained as a medical professional and then as a manufacturing expert. And then I came into finance and accounting. You quit medical school, what do? You need to make money, right? You need a job. So I answered this job for, it was a manufacturing facility, very high repetition, same item over and over again. Lots of activity across 5 different states. And they were struggling to maintain the right levels of inventory. And in this particular industry, if you didn't use up your inventory quickly, it would become obsolete. And you'd have to write it off. So, and margins being thin in manufacturing, everybody understands that, if you're wasting material, then you're basically throwing profit away, literally, just taking a dollar bill and wrapping it and throwing it out the door. So when I came in, I started working with the senior, materials person to try and figure out how do we balance the inventories. And this is back in the day before we had MRP systems. This is before we had the internet. This was done by literally faxes and Excel spreadsheets at 6 o'clock in the morning. And the first thing that became apparent, the real problem was that we just didn't really have a central way of knowing where all the inventory was. It was some really basic stuff. And so over time, really what happened is I evolved into becoming a process re-engineer without even knowing that that's what it was. because they would say, okay, we're in constant stock out situation here. Anthony, go figure it out. I'd go figure it out. And I'd say, okay, well, we're missing communication with the vendor, or we're, the information coming back from the vendor is out of date by the time we get it. We're not acting on it. Could be any of a number of reasons. But the thing is, I would follow this progression of 5 whys. And the 5 whys methodologies, so it sounds old school, but it's really effective if you do it in a way that's non-threatening to the people that you're talking to. Because the reason why 5 whys wouldn't work is because people would be put on the spot and they'd be like, what, you trying to get my job here? Or are you trying to get me fired? So when you approach the 5 whys, it's from a psychological perspective. So it's like, again, when you're interviewing a patient as a doctor, you have to get that person to relax in order to open up and tell you all the things that you need to know. In other words, you hide something from your doctor, it's at your own risk. They know that. So they really work on that bedside manner, that rapport. And so early on, I realized that, if I just approach this from, can you help me out? I'm not sure why that happened that way. Not, why didn't you do your job? Can you help me out? Why did it happen that way? So I'm taking the burden on myself to say, hey, I'm the ignoramus here. I don't know what the hell's going on. You tell me. And in doing so, eventually, and they'd say, well, this had happened. I'd say, I'm trying to figure out why that happened. And then you just keep digging. And about the time you get to the 5th why, you're going to find the root cause. And once you fix that root cause, it goes away forever. And as long as that stays in place, then you continue to, and these constant improvements, always going after the root cause. I had a situation, a simple situation. Our invoice could not get out to a new client. Why couldn't the invoice get out to the new client? Well, because we don't have the billing information. We don't have the AP address, and we don't have the physical location. Oh, why don't we have that? Well, it's not on the contract. Well, what happens if we put it there? Oh, well, then we'd have the, boom, 3 whys. So by just using this simple methodology, if you're in the position where you feel like crap just keeps coming up, right? I keep getting the sore back. Okay. I keep getting my eye is getting infected, whatever it is, the symptom. If you go look in manufacturing and companies, it's a lot easier than humans, because you can actually change companies a lot more easily than you can change human behavior. But by following that methodology, you get to the root causes and you figure them out, and you make everything more efficient, and you save money. You will eventually save money, because there is not a single thing that happens in a company that doesn't have a financial impact. Early on, I realized that there were patterns that kept coming up. And the one pattern that kept coming up the most, especially if you're an entrepreneur or founder, you're starting a business, is lack of the proper intelligence, lack of the proper information when it comes to the numbers. And the numbers are the things that have dollar signs or euro signs or AED or whatever currency sign in front of it that you're living in. Because the entire reason of going into business is to make a profit. Unless you're a nonprofit, and that's not what I'm talking about. That's a entirely different conversation, but a lot of the similarities, it comes down to lack of information. You can't make good business decisions if you don't have the right numbers. And it's amazing how many times we walk into the situation, and the first thing I'm going to look at is I'm going to look at your accounting system. And it sounds really boring, but you know what? That's like a doctor looking at your spinal column, because that accounting system is the central pillar off of everything that you need to know about your business numerically, numbers wise, comes from. It comes from that accounting system. And it's amazing how many people treat that as an afterthought. Oh, I'll have my CPA set it up. CPA is a tax accountant. They don't know jack about a business. They know taxes. That's their specialty. That's what you want them for. Or I had a guy who was a manufacturing guy set up my chart of accounts. You're in software. Why on earth would you have a manufacturing chart of accounts for a software company? Now, we happen to specialize in software companies, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But the first thing we do is, and I'll bring in another analogy. I used to be a yoga instructor, okay? And anybody who's ever taken Pilates or yoga or any martial arts for that matter knows that your core, your central core, is the most important part of your body, because everything hangs off of that. If you don't have a strong core, the rest of your body isn't going to work right. It works the same in business. In finance, that core is your accounting system. And you have to have it set up the right way. And there are right ways and wrong ways of doing it. The wrong way is to use I'm sorry for all my tax CPA friends out there, is to have your tax accountant set up your chart of accounts. Okay. That's not how you run your business. You don't put payroll in one line item. You put payroll in customer success. You put payroll in research and development. You put payroll in sales and marketing. You break your buckets out, if you will, in ways that are meaningful so that you can say, if I spend more on sales and marketing, do I get more revenue in? What does that do to my cost of sales? Do I actually start to get more gross margin? And suddenly all these interactions start to make sense. And they make sense because you start with a chart of account and a financial report that comes out of it that makes sense for your industry. And it makes sense for your decision making. And the more important thing is that you know that the information that's coming out of it isn't guesswork. And you do that by driving everything down to the transactional level and making sure that every single transaction is coded correctly. And that goes back to that process improvement thing. Once you get that set up, it becomes a humming machine and it produces the results that you're looking for. And then it allows you to then turn around and say, what do I do with this information for future planning? So the CFO stands in the middle of two worlds. They stand looking in the rearview mirror of the car at what's happened to make sure that they know exactly what happened. And they're using that information to look through the windshield to help you drive the car where you want it to go. And in order to do that, you need a dashboard and a clear windshield. And that dashboard is your KPIs and all the financial information and metrics that comes out of that core, which is the accounting system. So when we come in, we treat it as there are three pieces we're looking to fix. The accounting and the reporting system makes sure it's giving us the information that we need to build the forecast, which is looking forward at cash flow primarily. More than anything else, that forward-looking forecast is cash flow oriented. Profit and loss statements are great. Those are for CPAs. Hi, my name is Anthony. I'm a recovering CPA. I know my debits and credits, but I am not an accountant. I'm a finance person, and I'm looking forward. So I sit between the windshield and the rearview mirror, and I help put the dashboard together so that the CEO can run the business. And that brings anxiety down. It brings guesswork down. It results in greater efficiencies across the organization because everybody's looking at the same set of numbers. Sales doesn't have one number and marketing has a different number and finance has, no, all that is eliminated because you bring everything into a central core that then pulls all that information out off of the same base information. Now that we have that set, how do we build value? So you fix the core and you get everything humming. Now, this is where the experience of the industry comes in. If you're a software company, SaaS is the typical term, all right? You're a SaaS company and you're selling it as a subscription. There are different ways to sell those contracts that will make your valuation higher. And so once we get to the phase where we've got all the right numbers and we're projecting the numbers forward, now we start looking at those projections and saying, where are we missing opportunities to increase valuation of the company? I'll always go back to my very first Finance 101 course. What is the purpose of a corporation? To build shareholder wealth, period, right? Basic fundamental. If you as a CFO are not in there helping build stockholder wealth, you're not doing your job, right? That's what the F in finance stands for, okay? Chief Financial Officer. And to me, I take that to heart. It's like, that means a healthy patient. That means that that patient is going to live. Now, corporations can live forever. We don't, right? And we age naturally. Corporations do too. They age, they get stuck. They get, maybe things are kind of creaking along and nobody's fixing them. So, but there's ways that you can fix that. So corporations can, in fact, live forever. We have some on this planet that have been around for quite a long time. But in the end, it's about building value. So all the numbers are great. I'm excited about that. Now I have the visibility. I have the illumination on the situation. I have the intelligence that if I'm a good CEO working with a good CFO, we can sit there and say, okay, our gross margins are too thin. What's going on? Or we're spending way more money on marketing than others in our industry and we're not getting the same result. What's going on? Why? 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 You see, that comes back then now in terms of how do you build valuation? Well, in the software industry, valuation is usually a function of your annualized recurring revenue, the ARR. And it's usually a multiple of that ARR is what drives your valuation more than anything else. And that's based on market comparables, et cetera, et cetera. But it's probably the single biggest driver. The second most important driver after that is either gross margin or your net retained revenue. And so then you start breaking down into other areas. So this is where having the metrics that fit your industry so that you can see how you compare to your competition. Because if you're not using the same metrics everybody else is, you can't really benchmark yourself. So you can't really know how am I doing against the competition. Now, you could be fine with that because, hey, you know what? I'm generating $1 million a month in cash and it's just two partners. And boy, we're just, okay, that's fine. That's a lifestyle business and you can have that. And it's great for a lot of people. Or you want to go the other way and say, you know what? I want to sell this thing. Okay. How do we build value? You can't build value until you know what's going on, until you know the fundamentals of the economics of your business, which goes back to that reporting and what we call the financial core, which is the accounting system, the projection system, and the KPIs. Those three things together give the humans, the creative humans, the ability to figure out where are the opportunities to build value. Oh, so here's a prime example. Come into a company, they're like, yeah, we sell our contracts. It's, the customers are paying us monthly and, we charge an implementation fee and da, 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 da. And I'm looking at that and saying, why are you charging monthly when you could get all that cash up front in an annual contract? Because if you bring all that cash in now, you have it to use now, right? Otherwise you have to wait. Oh, and there's a risk that 4 or 5 months down the road, they're going to stop using you. And so instead of getting an entire year's of income right now today or cash right now today, you only get 4 months spread out over 4 months and then they drop off the face of the earth. And let's face it, you're not going to go sue customers who just drop you, right? Legal is expensive. So what you want to do is you want to keep them. And so obviously one of the ways to keep them is to have a great product that they don't want to get rid of. So let's assume you have a sticky product. The other one is how do you make it easy for you to bring in as much cash as quickly as possible? Because again, you can't spend net income, you can only spend cash. And so that I easily spend 80 to 90% of my time with my clients talking about cash. And the other 20% is about building valuation. It's rarely about the P&L. The P&L is simply a tool that we use. It's like call it a scalpel or, a blood pressure machine, right? It's a tool that we use in order to diagnose whether we're healthy or not. And then we use that information to make informed decisions. So yeah, it's the building of valuation, I think, is probably the single most important role the CFO has. How can we help build value? At the end of all of this, assuming that you're not just building a lifestyle business and using it as an income source and you want to sell it and get a big payday. Now, a lot of things have to happen to that. I happen to have been lucky enough to work on 2 unicorns. So I got to see how they did it, right? And the way they did, and this is for software, and the way they did it for software in particular was, and the one case it was very, very clear, is they built an incredibly sticky product that was very easy to implement, that was very easy to use, and I'll get to the financial impact of that in a second, that practically sold itself, that met a great need in the marketplace. Now, you think about all the cylinders that I just listed that had to be hitting correctly. They had a product that was really sticky. They were fairly unique at the time. So nobody else had this product. It was a simple 2FA mechanism, right? Instead of punching in a number, it was click, click, click. It had a really high gross margin. Why? Because there was really relatively little hosting going on. So hosting costs were extremely low. So there wasn't a lot of data consumption going on behind it. they did it in a way that was easy to implement. It practically rolled itself out. It did not require a staff of a bunch of implementation people in order to make it happen. The software was written in a way that made itself almost, we say, stand itself up. In other words, it was very easy to roll out. That means that your customer support and delivery implementation teams are small. That's a cost of sales in software. You want that small. Hosting costs, you want those small. That's a cost of sales. That contributes to that gross margin. So this company was able to hit gross margins in the upper 80s because it had a great product that people wanted to buy, so they could charge a good rate for it, and it was easy to implement. And so people didn't want to change once they had it. It's like, why should we change? This thing is great. It went in great. They have great customer support. It's easy to use. I don't have any problems. It doesn't have any bugs. Oh, let's talk about that last one. It doesn't have any bugs. That goes down to the engineering team being very clear on exactly what it is that it's creating and having the quality assurance processes. Now we go back to manufacturing. The quality assurance processes to prevent bugs from getting out. If you take a look at it, that is critical. You need to prevent errors from happening in the first place. That goes back to a lot of basics in manufacturing. You don't want to be checking for bugs after the manufacturing process. You want to keep them from happening in the first place. This one results in waste. This one doesn't. And so it works the same way. So you have now software that practically stands itself and it's bug free. So you have a relatively narrow engineering staff, very clear focus. The product practically sold itself. That means that the marketing spend, when it went out, was going to the right watering holes. I always go back to the analogy of, if you want to find your clients, you need to find out where their watering holes are. In other words, where do they go to get information? Where do they go to get referrals? Where do they go to find businesses like you? You need to know that is. I can't tell you that as a CFO, but I can certainly tell you if you got it right, because it's going to show up in the number of leads, inbound leads, that come into your company. Now we start looking at, what's the conversion ratio? Are those leads properly qualified when they come in? When they're qualified, are they qualified to the point where when we sign them up as a client, they're not likely to churn? One sales attitude is, we'll buy anything. We'll sell to anybody. Here, do you frost the glass? Then you're a client. We just had a situation arise where a company got turned down for their first round of funding because they followed that approach and they sold it to anybody. And the problem is that a lot of those clients churned off. And so their ARR growth looked really strong, but underneath the ARR growth, their churn and contraction rate was horrific. And so it scared the investors off because they said, you're not ready to scale yet because you still have too many losses. That's a very real world example of how you could not build value in your company because you followed a faulty sales strategy and you sold to whoever you could just because you wanted to get the cash in the door. But that has an impact on your metrics. There isn't a single decision in a company that doesn't have a financial impact. So when I came in there and we did our analysis, the first thing I took a look at was that churn rate. And I said, yeah, you've got really strong growth rate here, but you also have this really high churn factor. And I think that's going to scare investors off. No, we're going to go get it. Guess what? It scared them off. So this getting yourself ready for the exit starts from the first day of your corporation. It should, in your mind. You should be very clear on whether I'm building a company for my lifestyle or if I'm building a company to sell it. And you're going to maybe make decisions differently based on those two. And you need to let your CFO know what that strategy is so that they can align themselves with it. But if you're building to an exit, then these are the kinds of things that we're looking at as we go along, is getting all of this stuff ready so that when an investor or a buyer comes in, what you present to them is something they want to buy. And they're going to be looking heavily at your numbers in order to do that. They're going to look at other things. They're going to look at product market fit. They're going to look at market conditions. They're going to look at general economic conditions. It could be a strategic buy where you provide a product that fits their portfolio. It could be a scaling buy where you're just bigger. You just make them bigger at what they're doing already. But in the end, knowing where you're going with that and tailoring how you prepare yourself for that, that's something your CFO should be able to help you with, because we're the ones that have done the exits. We're the ones that, here's how you go through an exit. Here's what you need to do to get ready for it. So most of our clients don't stay with us past, most of our clients don't exit because they're going on to bigger scale. But having been through 2 unicorn exits and seeing what it is that the due diligence asks for, what are those buyers asking to look at? I can tell you right now, it's those big 5 metrics: your ARR growth, your net dollar retention, what your cost to acquire your customers are, and your gross margin. And those are by far the biggest drivers. I think I'm already seeing where the next 5 years is going. And if you haven't heard about AI, then I'm not sure what rock you're sleeping under, but you need to wake up. There's the kind of the macroeconomic impact of AI, and there's the microeconomic impact of AI, right? The macro is at the big world scale. It's going to make all of us a lot more productive in the short run. Okay. I mean, I'm using it right now to, if I don't know how, some practical thing, I need to know how to do this. Used to be I'd have to call somebody up or I'd have to go do a search or whatnot. Now I just ask my favorite AI program, how do I do X? Now it may not get it all right, but it might get 80% of it right. And I can fill in the other 20% pretty fast. So that's just on a practical level as a practitioner is, I can ask questions now of the AI cloud or whatever you want to call it, that I don't have to sit there and either type an email or write somebody or interrupt their day. I can get that information with the understanding it may not be all accurate and I have to be careful how I use it. There's the other side of it, which is AI automates a lot of things right now that are not automated. So within the sphere of what we do, we're looking internally at developing AI tools in order to make us simply more productive for our clients, that we can get them their information faster. And I'm not going to, get into the details. Then there's the other aspect of AI, which is in the last 2 years alone, we've gone from essentially no AI clients to 2/3 of our clients are AI in terms of the software that they're creating. And I'm seeing amazing things that people are doing with AI. They go, wow, and that's a great idea. Go run with that, right? Without disclosing anything. There are a lot of software companies out there that are developing AI tools that go now to that macroeconomic thing, which is we have an aging population in many of our countries. Japan's like a great example of it. China's becoming a problem with it. The United States has a problem with it in that as people are getting older, they're continuing to clog the economy, if you will. Well, they're going to die off. They're going to retire sooner or later, and they're not being replaced. How do you replace that? Well, you make the people who are left more productive. What's the best way of doing that? Giving them tools that makes them more productive, so that instead of me supporting, say, I'll just throw a number. Let's say we support 100 clients. Okay, but with the proper AI tools, the same workforce can support 200 or 300. So if you're relying on fewer people to support your economy, you have to leverage those people to greater effect. I think AI is the path that I see. I don't see if AI as, Skynet's going to start declaring war on human beings and we're all going to be like fighting Terminator. No, that's not my vision of AI. I know that is a vision out there. My vision of AI is as a series of tools that just makes me better, faster, smarter at what I do so that I can serve more people. And I think, especially in the white collar area, that's going to be a huge transformation. In the blue collar area, you see this right now. There is a strike going on the east and west coast of the United States, the dock workers. Do you know what their greatest fear is? Being automated out of existence. So AI is here and it's scaring a lot of people, and rightfully so, because I think there are jobs that are at risk. But I think if this is handled correctly, it will complement and enhance humans, not replace us. Because in the end, I think there's one thing that sets us apart from the machines still, and that's will. I have will. I make choices based on values, based on emotions. I have will. I want to do this, right? Software doesn't have will, at least not that I've ever seen it. It responds and it reacts, but it doesn't have will. And I'm not sure that that's something we can program into a computer. So if you want to find out more about this, I have an ebook. If you go to sasgurus.io/lab, because lab, hey, I'm a medical practitioner. I have a laboratory, right? So my mad scientist laboratory. Just go there to that sasgurus, SAASGURUS.io/lab, and you can find the ebook. I'm going to ask you for your email so I can send you pesky emails to follow up. You can always opt out of that. Go ahead and download it. It walks through most of what we've talked about at a fairly high level, but it also has examples that can take you deep. So you can use this, right? You can use this to help your business now. You don't need me. You can use this to help your business. If you want us to help you and you see that there's more opportunity, by all means, reach out to us. We will have your information. But I would say, yeah, if you enjoyed this and you like what I had to say, it's laid out pretty good in our ebook.
21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
Imagine a space where triumphs, trials, and tales of entrepreneurship come alive. Welcome to the 21st Century Entrepreneurship Podcast, a gold awarded journey hosted by Martin Piskarik, connecting with listeners in 95 countries and ranking in the top 0.5% of all podcasts. Join our exclusive community, elevate your perspective, and embark on the path to success.